Alright, so our job was to figure out which of these 4 options would lead to an array that looks like this diagram. At a quick glance, the variable name is soccer team, and it has 11 elements in it. There are elements at various indices, so it's helpful to write down the index number, so it's just easy to remember. Now note that we start at index 0 and go up to index 10. This means that the integer 5 is at index 0, the integer 10 is at index 1, the value 23 is at index 4, and the value 1 is at index 10. Now let's review the code options. So this first option creates an integer of array length 11 and has a variable named soccer team. So far it's looking correct. Then we initialize the value 5 at the index 1. But wait a minute, we just said that the value 5 should be at index 0, so this line's incorrect. And then the next line, we're assigning the value 10 at the index 2. But back to the diagram, we saw that it should be stored at index 1. This code demonstrates a common mistake for beginners. When first working with arrays, it's easy to think that the indices go from 1 until the length of the array, which is 11 in this case. However, in reality, we see that it goes from index 0 to index 10 for an array of length 11. Alright, so this means that option 1 is incorrect. So let's move to option 2. We start off by creating an integer array of length 11. This is correct so far. But the variable name is just team, and we wanted it to be called soccer team. So this option is already wrong. The rest of the code is also incorrect, because we're just retrieving the value of the array at these indices, instead of assigning values to these spots. So option 2 is also incorrect. Now let's take a look at option 3. We're creating an integer array of length 11, and the variable is called soccer team. So it looks good so far. We initialize the 0th index to be the value 5, the 10th index to be the value 4, the 10th index to be the value 1, the 4th index to be the value 23, and the 1st index to be the value 10. Hey, and that's exactly what we want, so it matches the diagram in the quiz image. You may have been concerned that the code assigns values in a random order. So we assign the value of the first element, and then the last element, and then some of the middle ones. But it doesn't matter what the order of the statements are, because the lines of code are independent from each other. At the end of the code snippet, if you want to assign the 0th index again, you're free to do so, and the array would just update based on the most recent update to that position. Great, so option 3 is the correct answer. And don't worry if you didn't get this correct. This is the first time you're learning about arrays, and there'll be a lot more chances coming up for you to practice. In case you were wondering about option 4, let's still take a look at it. So here in option 4, we're creating an integer array, but we're capitalizing int. Since the integer data type is a primitive type, we need to type int with I lowercase. So this is a problem already. And another problem is that there's a space between the data type and the array brackets. And this will give us an error in Java because it's not a valid array declaration. The subsequent lines of code in option 4 are also incorrect. So we're setting string values into these index positions, and you can tell these are strings because they have double quotes. But the problem is that we intended to have an integer array, so we can't store strings inside of the elements of this array. And so because of that, option 4 was incorrect.